Hello again everybody and welcome back to the channel. Today we're taking a look at the latest product from LVFR, the A330-900neo for Microsoft Flight Simulator. Hit like and subscribe, and of course share your thoughts and any tips and tricks as you learn the aircraft down in the comment section below. We're here in Frankfurt, Germany, and we're going to configure for a real-life Condor route to Mombasa. Throughout this first video, I'm going to show you how to generate your flight on SimBrief, import it into the LVFR A330-900 aircraft, and then we're going to work through pushback, startup, so on and so forth. The video will focus on the state of the aircraft at time of release. There will be future updates from LVFR in improving various elements of the functionality of the aeroplane, including LNAV and VNAV modes, and with it on release it does not currently support coordinate insertion within the flight plan and won't support Cat 3 autolands either, but again they'll be looking to do that for the future. It also has OANS, and we'll take a little look at that throughout the journey too, which is an airport navigational system. So venturing into the flight deck then, an instantly recognizable A330 flight deck environment, and we are cold and dark, so all of the systems are switched off, and first thing we're going to do is actually think about planning our flight for today. With that, I'm going to show you guys the flight plan route for SimBrief and our flight from Frankfurt to Mombasa today. So Condor 2282 Frankfurt to HKMO Mombasa with an alternate of Nairobi, with the A330-900 for the aircraft type there, and we'll leave the cost index on automatic, and a few other elements of the flight planning we'll leave to SimBrief to sort out. Those of you with a Navigraph subscription, then you will be able to get the latest AirRack, and therefore with it the latest flight plan options and waypoints, so on and so forth. Our scheduled block time of 8 hours 25 minutes, departing runway 25 right and the arrival runway of 21. Depending on the weather, you might have different departure runways, or wherever you are you're flying. Do check the weather prior to departure to make sure you're using the correct runway. And our selected route is quite a long one, isn't it? All the way across Europe down into Africa. No coordinates though, because it doesn't currently support coordinate insertion within the FMS on release. And we have got a valid route for the current AirRack 2310. With that in mind, I'm going to press generate flight and let SimBrief do its work. And there we have it. So that's our route completed. We've got our block fuel down here, payload, cargo loads, 262 passengers, and all of our weights, along with our routing and all of the other data within our flight plan too. So now we turn our attention to the aeroplane. Initially we're going to look up onto the overhead panel, and we've got EXT A and B available, and the batteries are both off. So let's have a look at the EFB. Press the plus, increases the brightness. And you can see the very bottom option here is SimBrief Flight Plan. If you hover over these tabs, you can see that they expand, and therefore you can see various different options. You can work out which things are which. Charts require a Navigraph subscription, of course, and Navigraph settings, you need to authenticate your account. So we're going to press SimBrief Flight Plan first, and like the other aircraft in the LVFR catalogue, you can insert your ID there, which is the 5-6 or so letter identifier, and you'll find that in your account settings on SimBrief. So I'm going to go ahead and insert mine. And then I'm going to press the Fetch OFP button, and there it is, it's found our flight plan. Various bits of data there for us to look at, including our flight number, all of our routing, and our weights that we just saw on the other screen, didn't we? So with that in mind, we've got to press the home button, And then we're going to look at ramp manager. If we want to use external power, we're going to press that plug button there. And external A has gone online. External B is also available. Let's turn that on. Battery 1, battery 2. We can leave APU battery off for the time being until we want to actually turn the APU on, and then we can pop that on as well if we wish. But in the meantime, all of the systems are going to establish themselves, and we can go ahead and turn the various brightness settings up of all of the displays until you are happy. With all of the brightness settings yourselves. Little toggles there. You can see me rotating now. They increase the glare shield lighting there, really nice. And to increase the brightness of the MCDU, we press that BRT button. Do the same for MCDU2 and MCDU3 as well. We can press this button here to bring the armrests up of the aeroplane. And we've got floodlights and pedestal integrated lighting there as well for the main panel and the pedestal, and then on the right hand side the floodlights for the pedestal as well. So set all of the lighting up as you need it. In flight, by the way, when you're flying around and you get a bit peckish and the snacks arrive, you can pop that open, and it also has a handy little checklist in there for you as well, just in case you get stuck. You can have a little look here and just check some of the really key items off the list. I'm going to flick the QNH across to hectopascals. That's what we're going to be using today. And then we can look at weights and fuel. So in here, we want to make sure that we set the correct weight based upon our flight plan for today. So, payload in kilograms, it's about 27,000. So we will try and get as close as we can to that figure. 27,333. And then fuel load, 52,000 kilograms is what we want. And that's as close as we can get, 55%. So it changes the figures a little bit, but that's fine. Now let's turn our attention to the MCDU. Before we go any further, we need to align the IRS. So we're going to look all the way to the overhead panel, look up, and we're going to look to ADRS 1, pop it to nav, ADRS 2 to nav, ADRS 3 to nav. Make sure the beacon lights are on and the no smoking signs. And now we've added the fuel as well, we've finished refueling, we can pop the seatbelt sign on as well. Once we've fetched the OFP and we've aligned the IRS, we can either manually input the route via the MCDU, do it all by hand, or with that SimBrief integration that we had on the tablet here, what we can do is head back to that SimBrief route option here and then press send to CDU. So we click that once, let it do its thing, and then we just wait. Now while it's completing this process, don't be tempted to press a load of buttons and insert the temporary flight plan, because it hasn't yet finished. This will do it automatically for you. As you'll see here, it's slowly feeding in the route and the airways, and the distance is increasing, and it's still temporary for a little while. So we're not going to press anything else, just yet. We're just going to let it do its thing, and when it's completed it will automatically insert the route for us. So once the CDU is finished downloading the SimBrief flight plan, having clicked that button on the tablet, it will insert the flight plan for us. So don't click insert, and this is something that Latin VFR are going to remind people about post-release as well. So now it's in. Total distance travelled. Is 3690 minus the SID minus the star. Out of Cindy, Zulu 74 airway to Harem, and if you want to, you can have a look at your look at your SimBrief flight plan. So now it's built the entire route. 3,860 nautical miles. As you can see, it takes a little while. It can take a couple of minutes, and it's still loading in that route. We can have a little look on our SimBrief flight plan, and we can see the total distance that we expect is 3,950, which is where it's at now, in fact. So with that in mind, we'll have a little look to see if it is finished. And it's not, because it's still adding in a couple of waypoints. Now it's finished because it's gone green. Notice, we mentioned it a moment ago, I haven't pressed any buttons. It's slowly loaded in over about 3-4 minutes. It's a long route, isn't it, this one that we're flying today? But it's loaded it all in. It stayed temporary. I've not pressed anything, and now it's automatically inserted it in itself. It would be wise, however, for us to just feed through and have a little look, so we can press the up arrow there to scroll down on the tab, just to make sure that the route is exactly as we expect all the way through our journey today. We can compare that against what we've generated earlier on SimBrief. The little white letters there, L173, that's some of the airways that we're flying through today, and then the waypoints as well, the big letters. So that looks pretty good, and I'm happy with that. It does not have the departure routing in yet, and it does not have the star in either. The star will insert a lot later into the flight as we get much closer around Ibrom Evogo. We check the weather, we commit to the runway, perhaps generate the ATIS information if we're having a look and able to access that. We'll get the weather, we'll select the runway that's most appropriate, and then the arrival routing. We plan with the weather from SimBrief, as you can see on the left, runway 21, Ibnoc 3 Alpha arrival, but we won't put it in just yet. So we've done init A. We can add our flight number as well here, CFG2282. And on the init page, we can align on ref and confirm the align as well. So how do we verify that the weather that we have here at Frankfurt is suitable for our departure? Well, we can go to the Home tab and we can look at Weather Report, ICAO METAR, EDDF, Enter, Request METAR, and you can see there wind variable 3 knots, all the 9s, few cloud at 600, temperature 7 degrees, dew point +3, QNH 1024. No SIG means no significant changes expected in the next 2 hours. So I know in the flight plan for SimBrief it said use 25 right, but actually that's not strictly correct, and probably wouldn't really be used for this kind of journey either. So in this instance we're actually going to change the routing to runway 25 centre. It still remains a Cindy for the main waypoint after takeoff. But we're then therefore going to use, thanks to Navigraph charts, the Cindy 3 Foxtrot departure. So flying runway heading initially, and then it will be very quickly a slight left turn down towards the Norheim VOR, and then heading past Frankfurt Egelsbach to Amtix and then Cindy. With that, the initial climb clearance to 5,000, which we have set already on the FCU. And I'm just going to go ahead and select that Cindy 3 Foxtrot departure like so. And there it is, that's the SID now input. And from the init page we can look at init B and we can check all of our weight data there too. And you can see it's already imported our 0 fuel weight and a block fuel for the journey, 54.2. And we can look at the performance of the aircraft now too. So we can click each of those options there for V1, V-rotate and V2. We can double check the transition altitude depending on what charts you might have access to. So back down on the MCDU we can have a little look at selecting our flaps and THS value. We're going to go flaps 1 down 0.1. If you're not sure, put a value around 0. And the aircraft will start to trim itself on departure anyway. And we'll leave flex, thrust reduction and engine out for now. It's a little bit more advanced stuff looking into noise abatement procedures and things like that, so I wouldn't worry too much at this stage while you're learning the aeroplane. So, performance is done. Climb, cost index of 120, cruise, descent, init A, init B. We've checked our flight plan, checked the fuel page, the prediction page, and if we want to tune perhaps the Frankfurt VOR, we can tune that to 114.2, and the Fred VOR 1159. Done. We've set the QNH 1024, 5,000 for the initial climb. We can look down here at our MCDU 3 for our flight plan page, or even our fuel prediction page if we want to. We can edit and amend things in our RadNav page if we wish, and that then means that we can have the performance page up here on MCDU 1 and 2, and we can have a little look at our flight plan using MCDU 3 as well. Really nice. So with that in mind, let's get the APU fired up. Looking up to the overhead panel then, we're going to pop the APU battery on, and also we're not too far from pushback either, so let's get all of the fuel pumps switched on like so. APU master switch goes on for 3 seconds, no warnings, APU start. That'll then bring a new screen up here, and you can see the APU firing up. We'll monitor that until it becomes available. That's the APU, all working, sounds good, and it's shown available there on the panel and in green up the start switch. So, APU bleed is here on the A330neo. We're going to press that on, and with that we can now come off the external power. So external B goes off and external A goes off. We can go to the ramp manager. We can press the plug button, and if you haven't already and you've got Navigraph, make sure you have linked it in the tablet and you've connected your account to the aeroplane as well. That will then give you access to the various charts, but it will also give you access to OANS. Gives you a couple of different options here: off, Xbox, low, mid or high. I'm going to put high on, And then what that does is give you a really nice overlay on the nav display of your aircraft parking stands, with in fact the overlays of the stands. So Bravo 45 there to the left hand side of us, opposite us on the concourse there, the other side of the pier, Bravo 42, Bravo 47, and that will help us navigate on the ground. So we can use things like the Navigraph charts to look around this vast airport, or we can use OANS to use the overlay in the nav display as well. Really neat function that they've put into the aeroplane there. Okay, without further ado though, let's get ready for pushback. So, beacon on. Now depending on what you're using for pushback, I have GSX Pro, you might still have toolbar pushback, you might even just use Control P. Now's the time to connect that tug.
This parking is too small for your aircraft.
We can confirm via the ramp manager that everything is clear, so we have no ground equipment around the aeroplane, and everything else is set up and checked. If you want to, you can work through the aircraft checklists on the tablet there. Nice to leave that open in flight, just so you can work through that and verify it if you want to. It is obviously in that pull-out tray as well. And if you're not quite comfortable with getting the aeroplane fired up, what you can do is go into system states and just press ready to taxi.
Has been inserted.
So what have we done so far to recap then, just prior to pushback? We have generated a flight on SimBrief, we've loaded our fuel, our weight, our balance of the aeroplane, we've then put all of that into the MCDU, having turned all of the systems online, we've added our departure routing, and we've got the APU fired up. So all we need to do now is start the engines, taxi, take off, and climb to cruise, and away we go.
Release parking brakes.
So, as the dispatcher has asked, I'm going to set 2000 in the transponder just before we do go for IFR flights.
Release parking brakes.
We want to release our parking brake. So, going to do that now with a keybind. You can click that button there for park brake.
Start at will.
And our engine mode selector switches are here on the aeroplane. So we're going to move ignition mode start, and we're going to start engine 2 first, making sure the throttles are in the idle position. Engine 2 run. We've already got our beacon lights on and our APU on bleed, so that's going to now start the engines. You can see the displays now. But the engine start, N2 is rising. It's also displayed there. Fuel flow is increasing, and then 1 now, the first stage compressor, is increasing too. And we'll just monitor that through the engine start. While we push back, I'm going to turn the screen brightness of the nav display right up to its highest limit, so you guys can see that OANS displayed there. Really nice, isn't it? And we just monitor that engine start. In fact, engine 2 is already available, isn't it? Look. So, with that in mind, we can look down and start engine 1. The pushback is almost complete. We'll wait for the ground staff to ask us to select the parking brake whenever they've finished the pushback. So that's pushback and engine start complete. Our job hasn't finished though, of course. Takeoff memos have already automatically come on here. We need to extend our flaps to 1+F and do some control surface checks, and the aeroplane is now prompting us for that. So we're going to get the stick, our yokes, our sticks, whatever hardware we're using, and we're going to do all of our control surface checks. So fully right on the ailerons, back to neutral, fully left on the ailerons, release back to neutral, all the way back on the elevator pitch there, and forwards. You can see all of the arrows moving, which is also translating outside the aircraft to the control surface deflections.
Tow truck disconnected. Bypass pin removed.
And we can check the rudder as well, which often in
Left is
Microsoft
clear,
Flight
right
Simulator
is
needs a
clear.
little bit of a wiggle just to refresh any sensitivity. So I do this a couple of times just to get the sensitivity back, and there we go. Whatever takeoff trim setting we've selected, we also now need to make sure that we've selected that. Down 0.1 is what we've set. I'm actually going to change that to 0.1 up and keep that in the green band. So I'm going to go 1/up 0.1. Just going to re-verify our V-speeds. Make sure that we have the little dots there for managed speed, managed heading, and managed climb. 5,000 set. There's the ground crew. It's going to show us the ground pin. There we go. And we are ready for taxi. Flight directors need to go on. Could have done that prior to pushback as well. We're going to put the nose wheel light on. And with the engines started, we're going to put the ignition mode back to the centre. APU bleed off. APU master switch off. Checking left and right clear. Park brakes off. And then using whatever charts that we have access to, we're going to taxi to the runway here at Frankfurt. It's going to take us to Lima 3, nice short taxi for us today, and then we're going to take off. So, tiny little bit of throttle, just to get us rolling. As we taxi out, share what routes that you're going to be completing down in the comments below. Let us know where you're flying to in the LVFR A330-900. As a reminder as well, of course, coordinates not yet available in the release variant of this aircraft package, but it will come in a future update. Top tip for taxiing in aircraft this long and wide is A, take your time, but B, try and keep that yellow line in between those wheels. If we keep the nose wheel on the yellow line, then what we would have done here as a prime example is cut the corner and probably ended up knocking that the signage over there. Definitely something to be wary of when you're taxiing in these longer aircraft. So, as we taxi out, I'm just going to show you guys the SimBrief flight plan once again. You will notice that on the flight plan there's lots of different bits of data. So LELTA, it says N0488F290. It also then after that says MAR F350, VAVA F370, and what this is, it's showing you via SimBrief where all of your step climbs should be. So at LELTA it says we want to be around flight level 290, Mahon, MAH, flight level 350, and then at VAVA we'll step up to flight level 370, at Raska we'll step to 380, and then at Ohlone we'll step to 390. So lots of steps throughout the journey in order to try and kind of keep the aeroplane flying as efficiently as possible. If you don't want to do that, then when you plan your flight plan in SimBrief you can manually select an altitude like flight level 380, 370 depending on which direction you're flying, and that will help you navigate accordingly. One thing though that is worth noting though, and worth mentioning however, is that in the release variant of this A330-900 the aircraft will have issues in cruise at flight level 390 or above. So at the moment, stick to an altitude below 390. In this case, we won't go higher in the cruise than flight level 370. Hopefully that helps. So we're almost at the whole point for the runway. We need to do our taxi, our pre-takeoff check. So all the brake goes to max. Spoilers need to go armed. For that, we can either use a keybind or we can pull it up like so. And then we got takeoff memos there, no blue. Here's the whole point. We're a nice big aircraft, so I'm going to use that full length of the runway. And just prior to entry, I'm going to pop the strobe lights on. Nose light goes to takeoff, runway turn-off lights on, and finally landing lights on. Over the whole point, we're going to make sure the transponder is on and alt reporting is switched on. And if TCAS was working, we would put that on to TARA. Be a good time as well to pop the VORs on if we have those tuned. And you can see there the runway indications on the OANS. With that in mind, I'm going to go to OANS and I'm going to turn it off now. Off it goes. We're going to now increase the flight plan zoom so that I can see where we're going on our departure. If you want to use any of the other lights, by the way, folks, we can pop the map light on, ceiling light on using these little flick switches here. It's time to begin our long journey to Mombasa. Like other aircraft in the Airbus family, we're initially going to advance the throttles to about 40% and make sure that the engines are working as they should, we don't have any problems. Then we're going to advance through climb to flex, because we've set a flex temperature today of 42. We can amend that as well if we want to 50. And that would just change the D rate on the engines. If you've got performance calculators handy, then that's where that would be really useful. We're also going to push the side stick forwards ever so slightly until 80 knots. So, a little bit of power, set 40%. And I'm just going to zoom out so you can see what I'm doing with the throttles here as well. Through climb, flex. You can see it on the annunciators there as well on the primary flight display. Flex, runway nav, and we're maintaining that centre line. Speed's alive, 80 knots. So I've now released the forward pressure of the stick and it's now neutral. 100 knots, still accelerating nicely. We're on a D-rated takeoff here. We'll use most of the runway for this. We're very heavy, flying very far. Here we go. B1, rotate.
B1.
Little correction back on the stick. And we're going to smoothly continue the rotation, 3 degrees or so per second. And we're going to look at the flight directors now. Positive rate, gear up. And we're going to fly to that flight director. When you're happy, autopilot 1 goes engaged. We've already got the little dots there for managed modes, so speed and heading and altitude. And gear is up. Lever climb. So we're going to look down, we're going to click the throttles into that climb gates, and then the mode there goes to throttle climb. We're already through S, so let's get the aircraft cleaned up, and with that flaps being retracted, we can disarm the speed brake as well. As we continue climb, we're going to wind that altitude selector mode up to 390, and through standard pressure we're going to pull into standard pressure there, QNH 1013. Through 10,000 feet we'll pop the landing lights off, turn the seatbelt signs off, and then we'll go and stretch our legs and enjoy the flight ahead. But there you have it. cold and dark through to initial climb in the Latin VFR A330-900 for Microsoft Flight Simulator. Make sure you hit like and subscribe, share your thoughts, tips and tricks in the comments below, and we hope to see you for a video in the near future. But in the meantime, thank you for watching, enjoy your flights, and we'll see you soon. Take care.